Hello everyone, welcome to Technology Explained. I am Advait and right now we are going to study vectors in R. So what are vectors? Vectors are a very important data structure in R. Vectors can only contain homogeneous elements. By homogeneous we mean only one type of elements. So you can either store a string vectors or character vector or numeric vector, etc. You cannot concatenate a string vector and a numeric vector, and vectors are one dimensional. They can only contain one dimension, not multiple dimensions. So now that that is out of the way, we can start with the vector programming. So let's just create a vector called v1 and store a value 1 2 3 in it. I'll explain the syntax just in a bit. And we can just print the vector by typing in the name of the vector and clicking enter. And as you can see, we have the output, because one dimensional there is 1 in square brackets, and we have the output 1 2 3, which is the content of our vector v1. So to create this vector, we have created the variable called v1. We have assigned using the assignment operator, and you have used the c function. C function is used for combine or concatenate function, and we can enter multiple values inside it of the same type if you want to insert it in the vector, and then we can insert that in the vector using the assignment function. Fairly simple. We can now create another vector. Let's just create another vector called v2. I'll again use the c function, and let's just say I want to store a variable by the name of 10, and then we can store b with the value of 20 and c with the value of 30. Okay, so let's just print v3, v2. Okay, after creating v2, we have a, b and c. These are the three attributes, and the values of these attributes are 10, 20 and 30. So there are a few common properties of vectors which we need to understand before studying vectors. Those properties are type, length, my bad, length and attribute. These are the common properties of vectors. So first of all, let's study about type. Okay, so as we have discussed, the vectors are homogeneous, therefore they can be only of one type, and we can check the type of a vector by using the type of operation. So type of, and we can just say v1, and as you can see, there are 1 2 3 values. They are considered as double, and therefore it shows double. If we even do type of v2, it will show the same output, because 10 20 30, they are again double numbers. We can just check the output of v3, which I have created previously, and its output is computer. So it is a string, or it can be a character. I'm not sure while creating what I did. So v3, and yeah, it was a character. So it is a character vector. So this is the first characteristic of a vector. Now let's study about length. Length is very simple, and it is as it sounds. Length means you can calculate the length of the vector. So you can just use the length function of v1, and you get the output to 3 there, because there are 3 elements here. We can again try length of v2 and again get 3, because there are 3 elements here, and we can try length of v3. And in order to get the commands like I did of the above commands, you can just click the up arrow key on your keyboard, and you can get the above command. And if I type v3, there is the length is only 1. As you can see, there is only one element. And now let's move on to attribute. And the attributes are these, as I said, a b c. So in order to find these attributes a b c, we can just say attributes. There is a function called attributes, and we can just set in v2, because the v2 is the only attribute, only vector we have where we have given attributes. And we can just say enter, and the dollar names properties comes up, because the attributes have names, and 1 2 3 are the attributes. Simple as that. If we try to do a vector which does not have attributes, then it just says null. Okay, so now let's see the various types of creating a vector, and there are various functions to create a vector. The most common way is the c function, but then you have the vector function, then you have the assign function, sequence function and rep function. Yeah. Okay, so as we have seen the c function, we'll just go through it again quickly. So we'll just create a v4, because v1 v2 v3 are already created. V4, and using a c function we can create, there is shorthand syntax. If you want to create variables from the increasing fashion in a sequential manner, increasing by 1, so you can just say 1 colon 10 and a c function, and it will just store those values in the v4 attribute. And you can just see, like, for example, length of v4, for quick revision, length is 10. We have stored 10 variables, and c function we have already done. We can use to concatenate that. The next is vector function. Vector function is not usually used to create a vector. It is just used to declare a vector. So let's just declare a vector called v5, and inside the arguments are mode, and here you can see the type, which type you want to store. So I'll just say here numeric. I want to store numeric here, and we have to store length. So how long the vector will be, I'll just say 5, and an empty vector containing values of 0 will be created with the values of 0 for numeric vector. So you can just say type of v5, and as you can see it is double and numeric, those are the same things. Okay, good. Now we are done with the vector and c function. Now let's go to the assign function. Assign function is well, in my honest experience, very rarely used and only asked in theory questions. So we'll just get over this very quickly. We'll just create an v6. So the first argument of an assign function is the variable where you want to store the vector, and the second argument is what the data you want to store. So let's just say, for example, to store 10 in v6. So you can just say v6 may 10 store, 10 is stored. You can use the assign function again. I just want to override the values of v6. I'm not happy with that. And inside the assign function you can use various functions. So I'll just use c function inside assign function. I'll just store values between 10 to 15 in the v6. So if I just print v6, 10 to 15 are stored there. Simple as that. And the next function is the sequence function, and the sequence function is one of my favorite functions in R. And as you can see, if you just go over here and click on F1, I'm just going to do that again. Yeah, it refreshed. As you can see, it shows the output and the documentation for that. But right now I already know the documentation, so I'm going to tell you that. So in the sequence function, it generates a sequence. So you can just say from 1 and to 10. Oops, sorry, I meant an equal sign there. Yeah, and it will just create a vector from 1 to 10. I'm not storing it any variable for demonstration purposes. So we just created a vector from 1 to 10, and we have to and that we print that. So you can use the word by here, and it is a assumed argument, default argument, and the default value for that is 1. So if we just give it by 1, the output will be the same. And let's just say that we change that to 2, then the output will skip by 1, and it will be by 2. So 1, then 1 skip, and then 2 plus 5 plus 2 plus 7 plus 7 plus 2 is equal to 9, and so on and so forth. So that will be the sequence function. And in sequence function there is another argument, which is the game changing argument in my opinion. So the game changing argument in my opinion is len.out. Our last year question paper, the question was print odd numbers which are greater than 60. 10 odd numbers which are greater than 60. So we can just say from 61, because 61 is an odd number. And here if we say want to say 2, then we have to say 61 plus 10 into 2, because there are odd numbers means 2 may increase, and we want 10 odd numbers, therefore 10 into 2. But instead of doing this calculation, what we can do in R, we can just say by 2, because we want to increase the value by 2, and we can use an property called length.out, and we can say the value equals 10, and then we get the output here. And this right here is a 3-mark question at the very least if you explain this correctly. So the sequence function is a very useful function. Just what you have to remember is you don't want to use from, to, and by both at the same time. We can use only two of these three, because if you use all three, as you can see, it will give an error here, too many arguments, because these arguments may be clashing. In our case it is not, but they may be clashing, and therefore you can use only two of these three. Now let's go to the rep function. Rep function is usually used for repeat, and it's actually fairly simple. So let's just print v1 right over here. We have v1 equals v1 2 3, and if we repeat v1 3 times, that's it. v1 is repeated 3 times and it is given in the output. So 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and you can just do that again. But here we can use an let's just check the documentation on the right side quickly, clicking F1. Here we have times, and times is the default argument. Times equals 3, and it will give the same output because times is the default argument. And if we set equals 3 here, then the 3 value is given to the times. And there is another argument here to the rep function, which is each, and you can repeat each element in the vector by the number of times given here. So you can say each equals 3, and now the each element is repeated 3 times. The difference between these two arrays or these two vectors is here each function is repeated thrice, then the second, then the third, like so. Here 1 2 3, and this whole vector is repeated 3 times. In times function there is a curious addition. You can say use a C function here and type in 1 2 and 3, and now 1 will be repeated once, 2 will be repeated twice, and 3 will be repeated thrice. Here as you can see 1 2 2 3 3 3. So yeah, that is a very useful application of the rip function. Okay, so now how can we access elements of a vector? So we'll just print our handy v1 here. If we say you want to access the first element, we can just say v1 and in square brackets enter 1, and we get 1. v1 of second we get 2, and v1 of third we get 3. Simple as that. If you want to change the elements, we can say v1's first element we want to equal that to 10, and if we print v1, we can see that the output has been changed. We can say v1's third argument equals 20, and again print v1, and we get the changed output right over here. So it is very easy to modify these elements. And what if you want to delete an element? So the process is a little bit new syntax. You don't need to use the assign function, you can use the equals as well. Equals and assigns are interchangeable. I use equals because it is quicker to type, but in exam I draw assign sign. So after you have said v1 equals, we want to delete v1's second element. So -2 is denoted for deletion. And now you can just click enter, and if we print v1, the value of that is deleted. And if we check the length of v1, it will output as 2 because the second argument, second data has been already deleted. Simple as that. So what you can do here is dealing with any values is another point we have not touched on it. So let's just create an v7 vector, and we'll just 1 2 3 and just store na. Oh sorry, I think I have to store na as caps, case sensitive. Yeah. So if we print v7, we get the last attribute as na, and if we check with an is.na function and we just print in v7, then we get false 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 true. So if there is an na value, it will print true, otherwise it will print false. It is just something to remember which is asked in exam, so therefore I am telling you. There is another function I think in vectors called sort. So we'll just create a vector called v8, and I'm just going to close my eyes and enter random numbers. Okay, not 395n, we'll just do something smaller, not 19 again, 10 5 4 3 4. Okay, so we have created a vector called v8, like the v8 engine, and and we have these numbers. So what does sort do? Sort is used to, you guessed it right, sort these elements. So you can just say sort, and we'll just type in v8, and now all these elements will be sorted in ascending order. And if you want to sort them in decreasing order, sort v8, and we can say decreasing equals true. By default decreasing is equal to false, but in this case decreasing equals true, and we just want to store it in v8. So we'll just store v8 in sort and hit enter. We have stored it, and we can just print v8. As you can see, it is stored in decreasing sequence, and decreasing equals true is right. There is one thing about vectors which is another very exciting rule, which I'll say recycling rule. Okay, so let's just, for the sake of simplicity, let's take v1, and I'll create a new vector called v2. I'll just override the old vector and store in the values 1 2 and 3. What do you think will happen if I do v1 plus v2? In usual case, if these two are of the same length, then the output the first of the element will be added to the first, the second will be added to the second. But as these are of varying lengths, a recycling rule will come into place. So the v1 will essentially get transformed into I'll just show you for demonstration purposes, 10 20 and 10. It will recycle the elements until it matches the length of the original vector. So 10 20 10 20 10 20 ऐसे repeat होते जाएगा. It will use the recycling rule. So let's just do v1 plus v2, and what do you think will be the output? 10 plus 1 equals 11, 20 plus 2 equals 22, and 10 plus 3 equals 13. So yeah, 11 22 13 will be the output. Yeah, warning message, multiple of shorter length, but we use the recycling rule, and hence we get this output 11 22 and 13. Yeah, so I think those are all of the properties of the vectors. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and sharing it to your friends. Farewell.